Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD, Pro Physique Athlete. Today I'm going to be sharing a full 5-day hypertrophy program based on the full body split that is inspired by Eric Helms. As you guys know, I highly respect Eric Helms as a fitness expert and have had him on my podcast, Swole Radio, multiple times. In one of our episodes together, we talked about his training setup, and I realized that there are a lot of takeaways for the advanced athlete in the way Eric trains. From a bird's eye view, previously Eric has been following a 5-day full body high frequency split, which is highly customized for his needs. And today I'll be sharing a program that is similar to his in style, although it's not exactly what he's doing right now. This program has been designed with an emphasis on back and side delts, which will be really helpful for developing that V taper. And this will be a great example of how to program for the advanced athlete, and it illustrates how to use the full body split for further customization. Alright, let's do our program walkthrough. So this is Dr. Swole's Eric Helms-Style 5-day full body program. It's set with moderate volumes designed for the advanced athlete. So note that if you are in your first few years of training, this program will probably not be ideal for you. This program is set up with 5 days, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5. Here are the exercises, and here are the sets and reps. Down here we have the total number of sets for each workout. I've set this program up to have 5 exercises in each workout, which is what Eric typically does. And you'll see that we have to choose our exercises carefully here. Down here we have our muscle group set volume, so the total number of sets for each workout. Here we have a total number of weekly sets for each muscle group, and you'll see that this program favors the back and side delts. Eric has been working on these muscle groups for his upcoming competitive season. Let's start up with day 1. We start with squat for the quads, and here we just have one top heavy set of 1 to 3 reps. I wanted to use this program to demonstrate an advanced programming technique that Eric uses for power building. That is, he uses very minimal volume on his big 3 movements, the squat, the bench press, and deadlift. Each only have one top heavy set of 1 to 3 reps. Eric actually used this minimalistic kind of programming in order to continue working on his squat, bench, and deadlift strength while still hybridizing this with some more volume for hypertrophy work. As an advanced athlete, you can still build strength with very minimal exposure to your main lifts since your technique is already locked in really well. And Eric has talked about this on the podcast where he has had success with only doing a heavy single for each of the big movements per week. There are some potential counter arguments to this training style, which we'll talk about later in the pros and cons. Next, we have dumbbell pullovers to the back, 4 sets of 8 to 12. Then we have rope curls for the biceps, 3 sets of 8 to 12. Easy bar skull crushers for the triceps, 4 sets of 8 to 12. And finally, cable lateral raises for the side delts, 4 sets of 8 to 12. Moving on to day 2, we have chest supported rows for the back, 4 sets of 8 to 12. Then we have incline machine bench presses for the chest, 4 sets of 8 to 12. Lunges, which you can do with dumbbells, 3 sets of 8 to 12. I count these for the quads and glutes and hamstrings. Then we have cable upright rows for the side delts and machine calf raises for the calves. And we're using a myo rep scheme here, so you're going to work up to one top heavy set of 12 to 20 reps, followed by 7 mini sets of 3 to 5 reps. And you'll just be taking about 10 seconds of rest in between all of these. The idea is that you're going to be staying in that close to failure zone, so really maximizing the use of your effective reps here. Next, we have day 3, and we start with deadlifts for the glutes and hamstrings, and you're just going to work up to one top heavy set of 1 to 3 reps. Then we have the Dr. Swole pull down, which is a single arm pull down variation that I like, where you sit on the ground next to the cable stack a couple feet away, and you angle your body to 45 degrees from the cable. I find that when you sit on the ground, you actually have more control of the angle of pull, and you can really make sure you get that stretch at the top of the movement. 4 sets of 12 to 20 reps. This is going to be a great exercise for the higher rep ranges, lighter weights, and it's going to be better suited for advanced athletes. For the most part, I think beginners should be focusing on more core heavy movements. Then we have close grip dumbbell bench press, which I count for the triceps, but also the chest, 4 sets of 8 to 12. Then we have machine preacher curls for the biceps, 3 sets of 12 to 20. And finally, cable lateral raises for the side delts, 4 sets of 12 to 20. You'll see that the exercise order here changes in each workout, and this reflects the rotating prioritization we give to different muscle groups. So for example, on this day 1, squat is prioritized to the quads, then on day 2, back is prioritized, then we have deadlifts first, and then later in the week, we'll have leg press and bench press first. The order of exercises does matter somewhat, and the first exercise of the day usually gets a bit of priority. Going on to day 4, we start off with leg presses for the quads, 4 sets of 8 to 12. And then we have leg press calf raises, which you can superset on the leg press machine. We're using a MyRep scheme again, so 1 main heavy set of 8 to 12 reps, followed by 7 mini sets of 3 to 5 reps. And this is approximately equal to 5 straight sets. Then we have machine overhead press, which hits your anterior and side delts, but also a bit of your triceps and upper chest, 3 sets of 6 to 10. Notice that we have a lot more machine work in this program, and this is in order to reduce fatigue. As a very advanced athlete, fatigue will become a bigger and bigger player, and you will have to ration out your recoverability very wisely. Next, we have the Helms row for the back, 4 sets of 10 to 15. And this is a chest-supported row variation that Eric Helms developed himself, actually, where you basically lean over so you're standing, but your chest is supported against a bench that is set at about 45 degrees, which allows you to get a nice free weight chest-supported row. It's kind of like a seal row, except with less setup required. Then we have machine lateral raises for the side delts, 4 sets of 10 to 15. Going on to day 5, we start with bench press for the chest, 1 top heavy set of 1 to 3 reps. Then we have leg extensions for the quads, 4 sets of 10 to 15, and leg curls for the hamstrings, 4 sets of 8 to 12. After that, we have reverse lat pull downs for the back, 4 sets of 8 to 12, and lying bicep curls for the biceps, 4 sets of 8 to 12. And this is one that I just had to slip in there. I think it works really well. Basically, you lie flat on your back on a bench. It's like an incline curl, but with the bench set flat. I specifically put reverse lat pull downs here to give your biceps a little bit more volume, since this program doesn't have a whole lot of arm work proportionally. This is one of the big powers of the full body split, in that you can really control the amount of volume you do for each muscle group. Back is actually the top priority in this program, and you'll see that we have a back movement with 4 sets programmed on each day. The way Eric was doing it was he had his back work coming first each day to give it even more priority. I didn't make the prioritization as extreme in this case. Next, side delts are getting trained 4 times per week, so they come a close second to the back in terms of specialization. Our chest is getting trained 3 times per week. Then we got biceps here 3 times per week, but biceps are getting trained indirectly with your back work, so they're basically getting trained with every workout. Triceps are getting trained 2 per week, but they also get hit with your other chest movements. Quads are getting hit 4 times per week, so a relatively high frequency, and glutes and hamstrings are getting trained 3 times per week. Finally, calves get trained 2 per week. You'll see that I've set the workouts with our big 3 movements in them to have relatively fewer sets, and this is to accommodate the fact that you will have to warm up for those heavy sets. Okay, now that you've seen the program, let's talk about the weekly layout. So here's the way I designed it. Full body splits are easy to set up across the week because you basically want to distribute your rest days as evenly as possible. But there was quite a bit of thought that went into the ordering of the days here. You'll see that I specifically set things up so my squat and deadlift came after rest days, which allows you to hit these big heavy movements when you're as rested as possible. This is going to be important if you are an advanced athlete really chasing strength on those movements, and particularly because we programmed with the idea of you going heavy in mind. Now, in general, if you didn't have to have this power building setup where you're trying to bring up your squat, bench, and deadlift numbers, this wouldn't be as important, and it would be really easy for you to shuffle workouts across the week when training full body. But when you do have this kind of prioritization, then it does matter. Notice that I also strategically spread out my squat, deadlift, and bench as evenly as possible throughout the week for fatigue distribution of these movements. If you are a highly advanced athlete able to move a lot of weight on these movements, they will cause you a lot of fatigue and you will want to spread them out. You'll notice that the full body setup really allowed us to customize the program in terms of the frequency and volumes for each muscle group. And I was able to spread out the training for each muscle group really well across the week. Okay, let's talk about the pros and cons of this high frequency 5-day full body Eric Helms-Style program. Starting off with the pros, this program showcases a highly efficient power building strategy. Let's talk about this minimalistic approach. As you saw, we basically just had 1 heavy set of each of the squat, bench, and deadlifts throughout the week, programmed with really low reps like 1 to 3. There is a specific rationale for setting things up in this way. The idea is that strength is very much a skill. And if your goal is to bring up your max squat, bench, or deadlift, the most specific way to train for that is to do a heavy single of a squat, bench, or deadlift. So in programming this way, we're still able to get some highly specific work on that heavy squat, bench, and deadlift while having a minimal footprint on the entire program. The thing is, when you lift really heavy on these big movements, it causes a lot of fatigue. This isn't such a big issue for a beginner, but someone who's advanced, who's able to move a lot of weight on these movements, will run into fatigue issues. And dealing with fatigue is going to be one of the biggest issues you face as an advanced bodybuilder, and particularly as a natural. If you are on performance enhancing supplements, you will have an advantage in terms of recoverability. So the idea is that we gave ourselves a minimal exposure to our main heavy lifts and accumulated all of our volume for hypertrophy on accessory and isolation movements. Again, to caveat this is designed for a very advanced athlete. For other less advanced people, even if you are pursuing a power building strategy, you probably will need a bit more volume and perhaps frequency on your big three. Next, the full body split is highly customizable, and I really wanted to showcase this in this setup where we basically had different frequencies for every muscle group. This is a really powerful advantage of the full body split where you're basically able to pick and choose which exercises you have on each day and tweak the number of sets for each muscle group. So as you can imagine, it would be really easy for you to just add in a couple of extra sets of biceps on a certain day if you wanted to bring up some of the bicep prioritization. I want to keep this program compact at just 5 exercises per workout as Eric was doing. But as you can see, with intelligent programming, you can do a lot with this kind of setup. Finally, the full body split has excellent fatigue distribution. Since your training for different muscle groups is spread out across the week, you're able to evenly spread out your training stress. This is most important for the legs and back. Fatigue distribution becomes increasingly important for more advanced athletes. You'll see that I actually went to great lengths in this program to try and even out the stress across the week, and even to even out different workouts. For example, you'll notice that on the days that we have squat and deadlift, which are our most fatiguing exercises, I balance it out with relatively easier exercises in other muscle groups. For example, doing dumbbell pullovers for the back on the squat day and doing the Dr. Swole pull down on the deadlift day. Something like T-bar rows or weighted chin-ups would have been much more fatiguing, and if you coupled those on the same workout for an advanced athlete, you might not perform ideally just due to overall fatigue. Again, this doesn't matter as much for beginners, but as I said, we're talking about advanced programming here, so you'll see that I really am zooming in on these fine details. Okay, now let's talk about cons of this program. As we said, this program was carefully designed to have a minimalistic power building approach, but still you have a relatively poor SFR on those heavy sets of the squat, bench, and deadlift when you're just doing 1 to 3 reps. It is true that you can build muscle in the heavy, low rep range, even like 1 to 3 reps, but you generate a disproportionately large amount of fatigue for the amount of volume that you get. In other words, to accumulate the same amount of volume that you would when you look at sets times reps times weight lifted on, say, heavy singles versus, say, sets of 5 to 8 reps, you're going to generate way more fatigue doing those heavy singles. So I have to say that if you are a pure bodybuilder and hypertrophy is your only goal, then you might actually want to steer away from those heavy single doubles and triples that I programmed here. But I did want to illustrate an example of how someone like Eric might do this, particularly if you are competing in both bodybuilding and powerlifting at different times. I will emphasize that if you are a powerlifter, you wouldn't want to use this kind of setup year round. There is going to be some more complex programming and periodization involved for optimal strength development. But this is just an example of how an advanced lifter might incorporate some strength and hypertrophy training together. Next, this program does require auto-regulation since you are training with high frequencies for a few muscle groups. This means that you do have to roll with the punches on certain days, so if you are still sore in a certain muscle group from a preceding workout, you will need to modify the amount of weight and reps you perform. As a beginner, I probably wouldn't recommend a high frequency full body approach because a beginner isn't able to tweak their workouts on the fly depending on how they're feeling. And if you do try and set things too hard every day, you'll end up with a lot of overlapping soreness, which can eventually lead to chronic overuse injuries. Next, with the full body split, a lot of people talk about getting less of a pump, and this is just because you have fewer sets for each muscle group in each workout. But I don't think this is that big of an issue for an advanced athlete because when you're highly skilled in the execution of different movements and you have a really good mind-muscle connection, you're gonna be able to get a good pump even with just a few sets. For example, I can get a good pump even with just 2 sets for a muscle group. Finally, this program has a lot of emphasis on machine and isolation work. And I did put an asterisk beside this because this was intentional. This was designed for an advanced athlete who is trying to incorporate some power building here. To balance out the fatigue that we're getting from those heavy sets of squat, bench, and deadlift, we had to take a lot of less fatiguing movements, which involve a lot of machine and isolation work. This is not how I would recommend beginners train. If you are starting out, you really want to focus more on compound movements because this involves more muscle mass and will just allow you to develop more size globally. But at an advanced level, this may become a necessity just to balance out your fatigue management. Now, I will be sharing this full program as an Excel file in my Facebook group. So if you haven't joined the group already, find the link in the description below, join the group, and you can download the program for free. If you are an advanced athlete and you want to optimize your training program over long periods of time, check out my new book, Advanced Hypertrophy Periodization, where we talk about periodization, which is the long-term manipulation of training variables for optimal hypertrophy. If you want to see a similar high frequency full body setup, check out this video where I share my program that I was using during my Worlds 2022 prep. This is similar in that it was designed for an advanced athlete with high demands for fatigue management. and it illustrates how you can use the high frequency full body setup in a 4-day split. Make sure you're not losing out on gains by subscribing to the channel, and we'll see you next time.